All right. Are we alive? I'm not sure. I'm waiting for YouTube to update. Should be updated now. All right, that seems good. What about Twitch? Seems good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to each and every one of you to episode 24, I believe, of the Barrens Chat. Is it episode 24? Let me just make sure. Yes, it's episode 24. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to be back with you all. I hope you're all doing very, very well. Drew, how you doing, sir? Epic Thudo, how you doing? Drew, how you doing? Drew Dragon and Drew, how you guys doing? I hope you're doing well. We'll wait, as always, as is customary, for people to sort of arrive before we get into the actual topics. Obviously, with patch 11.1 just around the corner, there's actually a lot that we need to go through today, and some interesting stories and developments, shall we say. Ghostfryer, how you doing, sir? CCS, how you doing? I'm doing pretty good, not gonna lie. Very excited. Epic Thudo, excited for what? What's got you so excited? Oh, I just finished 2.5, almost 3 hour podcast recording, so I am a little tired. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm a little tired. Well, I've had a haircut a week ago, CCS, so the haircut is technically not new, but thanks for noticing. You didn't say nice haircut, but still, you noticed, and that's all that matters. I really appreciate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, how have you been? How's your week gone? It's Friday. It's almost that time of the week where you can just relax, sit back, play your favorite video games. So what happened? What's news? The next FF14 content patch is in 4 days, and it seems Siren Isles has lore. So I'll be diving into that too. Both games have content for me. Yeah, I haven't heard good things of Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail. It would appear as if a lot of people are not that happy with Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail. But then I don't really know. I don't know why people are so unhappy. It turns out, or it sounds, from the sounds of it, it seems like it's just story. People aren't all that happy with how the story played out. So I've no idea. I thought always Final Fantasy XIV is pretty solid on story. But, you know, they made a bit of a... Well, they had not that good of a story in ARR. Then a lot of people complained about Stormblood. But, I mean, Heaven's Ward was fire. People loved the one after that. Shadowbringers, people love. So maybe this is just their sort of, you know, small failure before they really kick it back into gear. Or it could just be that, you know, people... You see, this is where... I don't want to talk about Final Fantasy too much because I obviously don't play that game anymore. I liked it when I played it, but I've got other things that I want to play now. Kiki, how you doing? I think, yeah, then she says, I think it is something to do with natural ebb and flow, but I also think they took a massive risk. You know, they sort of said, okay, Endwalker is the end of the official story up until now. And in Dawn Trail, we're laying the groundwork for a new story to start. Because from ARR all the way to Endwalker was basically one big saga. And everything fitted together. So it's sort of... It is to be expected that people are not going to immediately take to the next story because, well, they judge the next story literally based on the previous story. So you know, maybe it takes some time for people to sort of accept, okay, never mind, it's perfectly fine. Endwalker was the conclusion to A Realm Reborn, so yeah, this story is a prologue to the next era. That's pretty much what I think, yeah. Post, how you doing? Hey, Akulon, I hope you're alright. Thanks for the video about MMOs itself. I see the problem more with instant gratification and dopamine just being different now, but nice video. Misha, thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I didn't make that video public, as it were. So the video didn't notify all subscribers because it is sort of different to my normal content. You know, it's not WoW lore. It is just something that I've been thinking about and something that I've been sort of wrestling with as a topic to try and get my head around why. You know, why are we in a world now Gibbleton, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Why is it that we sit in the current world where a lot of people seem to be very unhappy with World of Warcraft and the War Within, even though I think objectively speaking, the War Within is a pretty good expansion, but then also just Dawntrail getting completely raked by its player base. And I can't help but think that there's maybe an element of the whole gaming industry is consistently adapting. Games have to consistently adapt to what is being done and how to do it better. So, for example, if you look at the RPG genre, right? So just RPGs, the kind of games that I like to play. You go from games like Pillar of Eternity, you go from Pillars of Eternity 2, you have some Pathfinder Kingmaker in there, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, and you can see how Divinity Original Sin 2 comes out, and it already has to push the envelope pretty far forward, right? So it really has to give players a lot more freedom and a lot more ways in which to interact with the world and for the world to also interact with the player. And it would not have worked as well. So, for example, Pillars of Eternity has a pretty good storyline for those of you that might be interested in that type of game. Pillars of Eternity, Pathfinder, Kingmaker, even, that is pretty decent. It's got a good storyline. But it didn't go nearly as big as Divinity Original Sin 2, purely because it was still, and still is, the bog standard RPG, CRPG approach. It does nothing different to what you would have found in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 more than 20 years ago. It does the exact same thing the same way. Then comes Baldur's Gate 3. And Baldur's Gate 3 completely revolutionizes the industry. Right? From the ground up, no RPG from year on forward will ever be able to perform well if it doesn't at least adhere to most of what Baldur's Gate 3 had laid down. And you can see the AAA developers had a meltdown over it. The same can be said for Cyberpunk 2077. In its glory state, once all of the patches were applied and the game got good, you suddenly have a game that is a trendsetter. That is the sort of, this is the standard, all other games will have to adhere to that standard. So gaming, in general, have upgraded year after year, month after month, release after release. They have to keep up with what players expect, what players want. MMOs haven't. And it sounds... actually, you are correct. Planescape Torment is another very, very good game. But even there, I would say it doesn't do... Baldur's Gate 3 definitely expands on that and does everything just better because there's so much... Remember, you learn and you keep adapting. I would say the one problem that MMOs have is that they have sort of stagnated. All MMOs keep doing the same stuff over and over again. And while every MMO on the market today will focus on slightly different things, they still all do all of the same things with very little adaptation. And that might be why you get some people that are complaining, why some people are not having as much fun in WoW, even though the War Within, in my opinion, is a really good expansion. But I also think, and this is going to almost certainly make a lot of you upset. So I apologize ahead of time if I cause you to be upset, but please bear with me. There are a lot of WoW players that play World of Warcraft as their only game. They play nothing else. This is their game. This is the only game that they play, and they have no interest in installing other games. Blizzard, for their part, have consistently tried to make the World of Warcraft a more accessible game. So a game where more people want to, can log in, play for a couple of hours, and then log out. And you don't need to grind yourself to death in order to get everything unlocked. Well, the problem is this fundamentally, you have what is called a mutually exclusive goal. if you achieve the one goal by making it easier for people to just get what they need and go play something else, you immediately piss off the people that are hardcore Andes that want to farm and grind and basically want something to do. This is why, even to this day, you have people calling for a return of Azerite power. Even to this day. Kibbleton, thanks for the follow, man. Really appreciate you. I'm going to read through chat in a second, by the way, so just keep leaving your messages. I will read everything that you guys write. This is why you still have people calling for a return to Azerite power. Because they want something to farm. They want a reason to be in the game, and a reason... The game needs to give them a reason to log in every day and to grind out the farm. When the game doesn't do that, because when the game did that, you pissed off all of the people that sort of just wanted to enjoy their time in the game, and they didn't want to make the game a second world, a second life. It's always going to be in that sort of world. If you guys get my meaning, you're always going to end up with one group angry. So if you do cater to the hardcore Andes, you piss off all the casual players. And if you cater to the casual players, you piss off the hardcore players. And it's like, well, damned if you do, damned if you don't. What's the answer? In this scenario, chat, where we have a impossible choice in front of us, we either give the casual Andes what they want, and we risk losing the hardcore Andes entirely, because all it will take is a single hardcore game to come out to steal away the hardcore Andes, or we cater to the hardcore Andes, but then we risk losing the casual Andes. And there are already a number of casual games out there that are trying to get the casual Andes away from the game. So what's the answer? What do we do? Just become a universal collector and you will always have enough content in WoW? Damn, the problem is not everyone likes that, right? You're always going to make one group angry. The answer is to double down on your core audience and make the game amazing for them. Credivain, I think the problem in World of Warcraft is when we say core audience, that doesn't mean much in WoW. Because of WoW just being around for so long, I would not be surprised if there are like 3 or 4 major groups with sort of similar percentage of the player base, and then maybe a couple of smaller groups with fewer percentage points. But I don't know if there is an overwhelming group. I don't know if there is a group that this is the group and they're the most players are in this group. The only group that I can identify as this, but the reason I don't include that group is because I don't think anything Blizzard does can save this group. We have from Holly Longdale herself, who admits the largest group of players in World of Warcraft are players who log in right after a new expansion or a new patch drops. They play for about a month and then they log off and they only come back next patch. These would be your story Andes, like me and you guys. Or at least some of you that care about the story. I don't think you can change the way they play the game. I don't think anything Blizzard does will make them play longer. If Blizzard made the game more grindy, they wouldn't care because they're just playing the story and then they're leaving. If Blizzard made the game less grindy, they wouldn't care because they're just playing the story and they're leaving. So that group I don't factor that group into decision making for how you want to operate at the game level because they don't want to play endgame anyways. They're off doing their own things. So what's the answer? Well, either we do what someone suggested that in chat, well, just pick your audience and cater to that audience, or we need to start diversifying into areas of game design where maybe we can design types of content for your more hardcore Andes. Because right now the game is already very much geared towards the more casual player base. It's very easy to get geared, very easy to get everything that you want. So you already have that player base. So what's the answer on top of this? Well, in my estimation, you take something like the Siren Isle. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do that with Siren Isle or even that they should do that with Siren Isle, but I'm using Siren Isle as an example. You take something like Siren Isle, and that island you turn into a hardcore, massive grind. I'm talking insane levels of grind. It's going to take you months to get fully geared if you play every single day on that isle. The gear is completely and utterly localized to that isle. So in other words, the gear works nowhere else. It's just for that isle. Maybe that isle offers alongside it 2 or 3 raid bosses that are actual raid bosses that people can go do. So an actual raid with like 4 bosses in it. Holy shit. Standard Hamster, thank you for the gifted subs, dude. Really appreciate that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're far too kind, sir. And then you have like a couple of dungeons, 1 or 2 dungeons that are also geared to the high level, grind yourself to death, just endlessly. And I think that maybe solves that problem. Because you're hardcore Andy, the person that wants to play the game like it's a second job, they can go do that. Right? And they'll be able to play that for months on end and just grind and grind and grind as if there's nothing left. Whereas the other people, they don't have to play that. Or they can play it much slower because it's not something that's tied to the main core play loop. Right? The gear there doesn't affect anything. That's maybe another option if you want to go down that road. Give your raiders something to sweat over, give your PvPers something to grind, world players something to explore and work towards for weeks and months, and your story lovers something to theory craft over for ages. So, in theory, everything you just said there is absolutely correct. The problem is implementing that as an actual game strategy can be very difficult. Let me just quickly go up here and just see. Looking 10 years younger. Thank you very much, dude. I know people never like when I say this, but I do genuinely think a lot of this just comes and goes in waves with things that last as long as this. There are limits to how consistently positive people's experiences will be. Do you think the focus on gradually working on evergreen features would feel better if the player base was a bit younger? I don't know if I'll play at 120 years old. I'd be fine with more risks being taken. I think player age definitely has a role to play, right? I think because you're in a world now where a lot of players that play World of Warcraft have families, have wives, have children, that's obviously going to influence it, right? It's very easy for someone that's single to say, well, just, that's your problem. But if you love playing World of Warcraft and you do want to do a bit of raiding on the side, remember, you have a wife and kids. They need your time. You can't just log on and play World of Warcraft. She has needs. Your kids have needs. So I get that. I definitely think age plays a role. I don't know how big the role is, but age definitely plays a role. WoW can just recycle every expansion before War Within into a collector's farm phase with expansion vendors for special expansion tokens you get from doing that expansion's content and all drops. You could do something like that as well. Take Siren Isle and make it closer to Classic in terms of gear. You crash on there, but you have to make small, meaningful upgrades. The difference of 5 strength matters. Actually, that's an interesting concept. In theory, I like that idea. Because I think you sort of get the Classic Andes to try out, retail WoW as well. Is Classic still doing well, though? Does anyone know? Like, what's the player numbers? For me to wake up and watch my beta echo. Ladies and gentlemen, can we get some hearts in chat for Stan? It is his birthday today. Can we see some hearts in chat? Happy birthday, Stan. Hardcore is thriving still. Gizu is full on heroic. Not a very reliable source. Based on my friends list and everyone who returned just for Classic, it seems to be dying. Even for new patches. I mean, it's as good a source as we have, right? Oh, shit. Ravy G, 63 months, part of the Degeneration. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're far too kind. Everyone is waiting for Warcraft Direct, the new fresh servers. I think the WoW tokens killed Classic. I don't know if that's... Dude, I'll be honest with you. I don't think that's what killed Classic. I think the problem with Classic is... It is an old game. And there's only so many times you can redo the same thing before you just get a bit bored. You know, I think it was always it was good. It was good when it first came out, and I think you'll always have people that play it. But I think it will sort of settle into its normal player base now. I think you'll see still maybe a couple of hundreds, maybe 100, 200, 300,000 players. And that will sort of be its core audience. Everything else will just sort of, you know, maybe there'll be spikes when they announce a new sort of season. But yeah, that's my immediate opinion. Martin, how you doing, sir? Martin, the thing is, I get where you're coming from. And trust me, I want a world revamp as well. The one problem, of course, with world revamps in World of Warcraft is there's so much world to revamp. Like when you just start going through the world map of Azeroth and you realize how many zones will need to be updated and will need to be revamped in order for them to become modern day playable, it's kind of scary. And I get why Blizzard isn't immediately doing it. Now, it is my understanding that Blizzard is in the process of doing so. So, I genuinely believe, and I think a lot of people are going to miss this because I think a lot of people don't pay attention to it. I haven't seen many people even talk about this. Do you guys know why 1107 had so much bugginess and was, generally speaking, just so incredibly bad? Performance-wise? Debbie, how are you doing? Engine? What do you mean when you say engine, Ashley? They were making changes. They were making massive engine changes. So they were starting to, and this is just from everything that I've heard, they were starting to unravel a lot of this spaghetti code. Now, for those of you that maybe don't know exactly how World of Warcraft coding works, imagine if in vanilla, the game developers baked the cake. And then in TBC, they decided to bake another cake on top of that cake, but they left the bottom cake as well as all of the icing and all of the decorations right there on the bottom cake. Sokka, how you doing? I am South African, yes. Welcome, South African brother or sister. I'm not sure. But Sokka, how you doing, sir? So now they bake a second cake, and then they bake another cake on top of that. And another cake on top of that. So we're now in the 11th cake that is being built on top of the first cake with all of the decorations and everything. So in a lot of ways, if you want to make a change on the 11th cake, you have to figure out where does this change go? Like, where does it actually come from? Because a lot of things are actually built on top of very old systems. So I was thinking about this. I was actually talking to someone that knows a little bit about coding about the logs, the DPS logs in World of Warcraft, and why the DPS logs are the reason for all the lag. So for those of you that don't know, the world lag that we get constantly, that's actually from the DPS logs. It's a whole server thing. I'm not going to go into detail. I've made plenty of videos talking about this before. Preach made a video basically breaking the story. So, and I asked him, but why not just fix that? How difficult can it be? And he said, well, here's the problem. If the code that allows for DPS meters to be sent to all players in the area is built on the same architecture as, say, the code for the auction house, this suggests that if you break that code, so you say, well, we're going to fix that code, you break the auction house. And maybe the auction house code is actually built on the trading code. So now you break the trading code, and then the trading code is built on this code, and you break that. So you can very quickly break the game. Where it's just like, well, the game is unplayable now. And all we wanted to do was fix the combat log issue. Because so much of the code, and it is a case of lazy development, but also it happens always. It's a thing of you need to act fast, and this usually happens during crunch. So you're asked with 6 months remaining to overhaul a huge part of the new expansion. And you go, shit, okay, I can't write new code and new structure for all of this. So let me just plug this code into this existing code because it will work exactly the same way, and then it's done, right? See, we fixed it, no problem. It works. So you found a very short-term solution. Now, what oftentimes will happen, and the only reason I'm talking about this is I have family members who work in coding every single day of their lives. And what usually happens is when you do something like this, so you take sort of like a quick fix, you make a note that you'll fix it later. So this is just to make sure that it can go live. You'll come back later and you'll fix it again. The problem is later you get busy with other things and then you completely forget to actually fix the thing that you wanted to fix. And then years later, they want to fix the combat log, but they can't fix the combat log because the combat log is plugged into so many other systems that will break if you fix the combat log. So the reason that patch 11.07 is so buggy and just generally performing so badly is because of this. They're starting, from what I've heard, they're starting to unravel the spaghetti code. They're starting to fix the code of World of Warcraft to make sure that when you do a world boss, the entire zone doesn't slow down to a crawl. When when there's more than 40 people in a zone, the entire zone doesn't just break. When people are doing X, this doesn't happen. So they're starting to do that. Now, why is that significant to a conversation of a world revamp? Well, you will not have a world revamp unless the corresponding foundational code is ready for it. Because a world revamp, all it will do, and for those of you that need a refresher of that, go do PvP in Classic and realize that there's no issues. There's nowhere near that amount of lag. Classic, I remember playing in Classic and there'd be 200, 300, 400 people fighting each other at the same time and you'd have no lag whatsoever. So why is there lag now? Well, it started with one of the big graphical updates. See, so as more resources are being streamed from the servers, as more resources are going into the game to make the game more believable, to update the physics of the game a little bit better, and all of this, those spaghetti code issues now start to bog down the game. So it starts to really drag down the game. And this is why they need to first fix the spaghetti code before they can release a major world thing, right? A world overall. With that said, I'm not entirely sure how an overall a revamp on the world will work, because it's always going to come down to, is it worth spending resources? Now, the way I have said before, and I'll say it again, I think the Sagas are probably one of the best ideas Blizzard have ever had. And the reason for it is the Sagas actually allow for Blizzard to revamp zones one by one. So we already know that in Midnight we're going back to Quel'Thalas. Quel'Thalas, Silvermoon City, that entire area there is one of the oldest regions in the game that has received no upgrades, love, or anything in its entire existence since DBC really introduced it. And I think Blizzard is going, right, if we set the new expansion there, we can do a full-blown revamp of that area. Because remember, ordinarily, what would Blizzard have to do with a new expansion? a new expansion comes out and Blizzard have to design a whole new continent for this new expansion, right? Now, because this is part of the saga, and we're probably still going to have quests in Dornogal and the Isle of Dawn as a whole, and there's probably going to be the Siren Isle is probably going to still have quests on it, and maybe a couple of other zones that's introduced. So all of this being part of one expansion means that area that we're now going into Quel'Thalas is the new continent. So you don't have to split your resources between, do we make a new continent or do we upgrade and revamp an old zone? Well, the old zone is our new continent, so we can put all of our resources into upgrading and updating that zone. And I think that's what we're getting. And I think we're going to get the exact same thing in The Lost Titan. I think we're going to get the exact same thing everywhere. I think Blizzard was starting to do that, or at least testing to see if it could be done with, what was that called in Battle for Azeroth? We got it right towards the end. We'd have a zone, and then there'd be this giant battle in the zone. It was existing zones, but it would be an instance, and then you would go in there, and there'd be this battle. Darkshore and the Arathia Highlands. What was it called again? Warfronts. Yes. Warfronts. Thank you. I just blanked on that name. But it's Warfronts. I think Blizzard was testing to see if it can be done. Can we take an existing zone and upgrade it and make it playable? And how long would that take us? Because if you go to those zones in the Warfront, they actually look pretty fire. Like the Warfront version of those zones look actually pretty cool. You know, the new buildings and the new ship that's there, it actually looks pretty good. And I think that's sort of what we're getting now. Slammin', how you doing, sir? Also, who else said hello? Sorry, I'm missing a lot of people saying hello here. I do apologize. Albiwar, how you doing, sir? Stan, how you doing? Liaseth, how you doing? So yeah, I think that's probably D4. How you doing, sir? Ghostfryer, how you doing? Sounds good. How you doing? I think that's what they're going to be doing. I think that's where we're going with this. I can see a world where Blizzard maybe also starts looking into mob remix as a potential way of revamping zones. So now that we have the remix sort of blueprint done, we can always get those developers to revamp the zones as well. So first, make a remix for every single one of the old expansions. So TBC remix, Wrath remix, or Northrend remix, Cataclysm remix. We have Miss Pandaria remix, Waters of Draenor remix, whatever, right? So you keep making these remixes. Once you have all the remixes done, then you get those same developers, because this is a special team of Blizzard developers. You get them to do the graphical upgrades. So they upgrade those zones and bring them into the new revamp state. So you sort of have way more levers that you can now use, way more departments that can be utilized to upgrade and revamp the world. I would be surprised if that isn't exactly what Blizzard is going to be doing. I think if they don't scale up the old zones, it would be a huge missed opportunity. Abuar, I can't imagine they won't. The reason I know for a fact they will, dynamic flight. If we're going back to Quel'Thalas, remember Quel'Thalas famously, Silvermoon, those areas can't be flown in. You can't fly there. Do you really think Blizzard is going to have an entire in-game zone where you can't fly? Dynamic flying is their new thing. So they will have to revamp the zone just to make it flyable. Change Season 4 with the remix. See, Groudon, how you doing, sir? I don't know if they would do that, though. I'm a little skeptical on whether or not Blizzard would be interested in changing or replacing entire seasons with remixes. I think what would instead happen is remixes will just slot on top of existing seasons, which is what they've done, up until now. Sort of bring out a new season of WoW and then also bring out a remix or a Plunderstorm. I wonder what did you guys prefer? Plunderstorm or remix? What was more fun for you? Okay, so we have a couple of Plunder Booty people in chat. We also have a couple of Remix people in chat. It was a great drop in, out, but Remix had longevity. You see, I would like to see a Plunderstorm with more longevity. Because I agree with you, Plunderstorm, I was literally having this conversation just before on the Mythic Banter podcast that I do. Great, how you doing, sir? I was having this conversation with Rurikon just before this one now. And so over the weekend, I played Monster Hunter Wilds. The new beta, the beta for Monster Hunter Wilds. And I had incredible amounts of fun in that. It's super fun. If you're someone that likes boss fights, so you like just fighting world bosses and things, that's the game for you, man. Because it's all just about fighting world bosses and upgrading your gear and stuff. But Rurikon asked me, will I play that game? And my answer was no, not as a main game. I've already pre-ordered it, so we can get that out of the way. I'm already going to be playing it. But will I play it as my main game? No. Will I play Plunderstorm as my main game? No. What I adored about Plunderstorm is that Plunderstorm fills the exact same slot for me from a gaming perspective as ARAM does for in League of Legends. When I have nothing to do, and this is what I did while Plunderstorm was live, when I'm just in between games or I'm not really in the mood to play a city builder now, whatever game I'm playing at the time, you know those times where you have an hour or two to kill. It's not enough time for you to really get into a game, right? So if I want to play Cyberpunk, 2 hours is nothing. You'll get nothing done in 2 hours. It's too little time. Or if you want to play Witcher 3 or Red Dead Redemption 2, 2 hours is enough. You need a whole day for that. And even for a city builder, 2 hours is enough. But then Plunderstorm was super fun. Because you can do like 3 or 4 games easy in an hour, right? So you get a quick 8 games in, you've had a good time, and then you go. Because you only had 2 hours. Monster Hunter Wilds is going to be that game for me. If I have a couple of hours to kill, just jump in, kill a couple of bosses, and then jump out and go do whatever real life stuff I need to do. So I would love to see Plunderstorm come back, be given a lot more longevity. Give us some kind of upgrade system maybe in Plunderstorm. Sort of like I'm basing this off of you get this in Call of Duty. In Call of Duty, you have this upgrade system with your guns. All of the guns do the same amount of damage, but you can do upgrades in terms of aiming and recoil and stability and stuff of that nature. You could probably look at something like that for Plunderstorm character customization options. More spells. I would definitely love to see way more spells. Maybe a slightly smaller but more focused map would also be really good. And then just overall, I think a few more balancing changes. And then I think Plunderstorm could, and yes, make it free, John. I think Plunderstorm could be a mega hit if Blizzard made it free. Oh, wow. How do you think Blizz will connect the new Quel'Thalas to the old world? Are we going to use the portal again? Martin, no. I think with the revamp, the only reason the portal had to exist was at the time, the technology wasn't really there for them to just seamlessly build it into the world. Would have taken too long. And so it is technically its own instance, right? but we have that technology now. I think the other reason they had to make it instance is that zone couldn't be flyable. So technically speaking, it's just the flying that caused the portal. If the portal, if Blizzard had the technology back then to just stop flying there, it wouldn't have been a problem. But can you imagine how bad that would have felt for all players? You fly into the zone and suddenly you dismount and fall to your death because flying isn't allowed in that zone, right? So Blizzard didn't have the technology, and so they added a portal. This meant that you had to dismount, and once you got in, you couldn't fly anymore. Obviously, that's no longer a problem, and I think with a revamp, they'll just remove the portal and put the world there. Easy does it. Actually, yeah, but what I mean with own instance is just, it's not where it's located in the canonical lore. So the canonical lore says it's on the Eastern Kingdoms, right? But that's not where it is. When you go through that portal, you are correct. You are actually teleported to the Outland map, because that's where the game was, or that's where that zone was built. Now, obviously, in like actual game design terms, the Outland maps aren't even in Outland, but you get what I mean. Do you think they will rescale the size and make the zones? I think with every revamp we get, the zones will automatically get bigger. Because I don't know if you guys have felt this, but go fly around the old zones, and what's the first thing you notice? Daddy is salty. Yes, free means more hackers, but I mean, there's plenty of battle royales out there that are free that figure out how to deal with hackers. So, you know, I mean, WoW isn't free, and there are plenty of hackers. Hackers will be there whether it's free or paid for. It doesn't really matter. They're going to affect the world map. I guess the new Cathalas will be much bigger than the one we have now. Yes, it will be. Martin, well, you can still do it within... It depends on, of course, how connected these things are to each other. If it will break stuff. Because if it will, then it means you'll have to update far more areas at any given point in time. But I don't think it should be impossible, especially since we nowadays have seamless transitions. You know, a lot of the zones, Blizzard started playing around with this already in Shadowlands, and they nailed it in Dragonflight. And obviously here, the seamless transitions are incredible. You go from one area that is technically supposed to be... take, for example, flying into what's that second zone called? Oh man, I'm just... Sorry, guys. I'm really tired. But you fly down the core way, and it's seamless, right? Through the stairs, bam, you're in the next zone. There's a loading screen technically there. The Ringing Deeps. Yes, that's the one, Outland. Thanks. There's technically a kind of a loading screen there. But because we have this new seamless technology, it would technically be possible for Blizzard to make the current zones, revamp them, make them much larger, and have a seamless transition between these zones. So you don't even know that you're, that you're going from one instance to another. And then by the time you've updated all of the zones, you obviously no longer need the seamless transitions between the zones, because why would you care? There, if for some reason the zone isn't finished loading, mob, that can happen if you don't have... If something goes wrong with your SSD, or indeed the server slows down, and so a lot of the streaming isn't happening perfectly. So yes, you can sometimes get a loading screen there. I haven't had it yet, but I've seen someone stream the other day, and as they were going down the core way, sort of halfway through the stairs, they entered a loading screen, and I was like, what? That can happen? So that is a little bit of a mistake from Blizzard. But it's early days. So the way a lot of other games deal with this, if you're, for example, No Man's Sky, the way No Man's Sky deals with this is the speed with which you will break through the atmosphere of a planet and the clouds of a planet is determined by your SSD. So if your SSD is slower, you'll take a lot longer to get through the atmosphere and the clouds of the planet. So you don't see a loading screen, but technically there is. So the clouds remain until you finish loading, and then once you finish loading, the clouds end and you, boom, see the world in front of you, right? Blizzard obviously didn't do that yet with their technology, but technically what they should do is make the stairs technically infinite. So what happens is you go down the core way, you enter into those stairs, and the stairs keep going until you're finished loading. So rather than popping up a loading screen, the stairs just keep going until you finish loading, and then boom, open the stairs and you can go out. Another place where it sometimes happened. Do you guys remember in Dragonflight, as you wanted to go down into into that inner zone in Dragonflight? Sometimes you would get to the end of the cave and the cave would still be closed. Yeah, the cave would still be closed. That's the same problem. So you're moving too fast and the game is loading too slow. They've clearly done a good job of catching up and fixing the problems with infinite loading, or rather with seamless loading. I think the next expansion they do that is going to be even better. I think it's going to be even better. Can't wait to see the new Silver Moon. Dude, I'm right there with you. For fun, I just did some math on how long a horse would take to go from Cape Town to Messina in... Wait. Are you talking about Messina as in Messina, South Africa? It'd take 15 to 18 days. A car can do it in 19 hours. Oh, yeah, you are talking about it in South Africa. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, horses do not move that fast. I have this fantasy of them revamping Outlands, and it's this 3D vertical-based map for dragon flying in space. I would not be surprised if Outland eventually gets an upgrade. So, this sort of falls into another topic that I wanted to discuss with you guys. I'm busy working on a video where I'm talking, where I'm specifically diving into the biggest lore mistakes Blizzard have ever made, right? And we're going sort of way back into stories about the canon, choices about narrative, choices about all sorts of things, and just sort of like the 5 or 6 or 7 biggest blunders. So the things that really altered the way the story was supposed to go in a way that maybe backed them a little bit into a corner. I don't know when that video will be out, but that's the video that I'm currently working on. So you asking me about Outland just now really made me sort of think about this a lot more, because one of the biggest mistakes I think Blizzard ever made was with the Old Gods. It's actually number 3 on my list, is the Old Gods. You see, I think the Old God storylines suffer from what I would consider to be short-term thinking, or maybe even the short-term fallacy, if we can use a very fancy word for it. It's the idea that we'll always be able to come up with something new, so we don't need to worry too much about the future. The future will worry about itself. When you think of the Old Gods have been with us since the manuals of Warcraft. The first mentions we have of the Old Gods is in the manual of Warcraft 3, where we learn about these Old Gods that exist on the planet. The Old Gods, almost every single time, actually every single time, are killed off unceremoniously within a single patch. You go to Cthulhu at the end of Classic, killed off in a single patch. Yoxaron, a little bit of, well, actually, yeah, second or third raid of Wrath of the Lich King, killed off in a single patch. You go to N'Zoth, killed off at the end of Battle for Azeroth in a single patch. And you ask yourself, okay, you have these 3 bosses that are clearly... Now, I think by the time we got to N'Zoth, they had already screwed up so much with the first 2 that they just realized, you know what, we may as well just end them. In their bloodline, it's good to go. No questions asked. But there's a couple of things that really harmed those choices. Did some irreparable harm to the lore and also to the understanding of the world around us. The first is, if we could just kill these old gods within a single patch, were they really ever that scary? And this must have been a question that some of you have asked yourself before. If we literally went in and finished off these old gods, these dudes that once upon a time ruled the whole of Azeroth, and we finished them off within a single patch, were they really that big of a deal? And then that immediately opens up a new can of worms. The new can of worms being, how can we, mortals, kill the old gods within a single patch without doing any harm to Azeroth, and yet the Titans, who are supposedly far more powerful and far more intelligent than we are, couldn't kill the old gods? Instead, they were forced to imprison the old gods because trying to kill the old gods nearly killed the planet. So you sort of had to have this thing of, okay, you've invented a reason for why the Titans could not kill all of the old gods. But then you seemingly forgot about the reason for the old gods not being killable the second the players went to kill them. I think this is a fundamental flaw, and I think if Blizzard could do it all over again, I think if Metzen could do it all over again, if you gave Metzen a secret, a remote like this one with a rewind button for life, he would rewind to that first decision to kill Cthulhu, and he would say, no. We're not killing Cthulhu permanently. We're going to do something else. And the reason for it is the old gods are so rich in the kinds of stories that you can tell with them, and just so cool as characters. I mean, what is the one thing in the lore of World of Warcraft that has sparked more conversations, conspiracy theories, and speculations than any other item in World of Warcraft canonical lore? The Whispers. Players clearly love the old gods. See, the old gods are weird. They're strange. They're different. They offer so many potential storylines. They're so fun to play around with. So I do think that may have been Blizzard's biggest blunder, is killing off the old gods in the way that they allowed for it to happen. I think a much better approach would have been that we didn't kill the old gods, but instead just pushed them back into their prisons, or, even bigger than that, we freed them. So there is an argument to be made that the old gods were not, as it were, stuck in their prisons, but more their prisons kept them out of Ny'alotha. And so by us killing them inside those prisons, we freed their souls in order to go into Ny'alotha. Now, it's not impossible that Blizzard can still go with a story like that. Remember, the Dark Heart of Xal'atath, where does it go? Where does the Dark Heart of Xal'atath go? Furorius, I have genuinely not had time yet. I promise I will do it probably over the weekend, but I've genuinely not had time yet. I rush from morning to evening just trying to get all the streams and the videos done. I don't even have time to check anything outside of just trying to get everything done and get everything uploaded. But what was I talking about now? I completely blanked. Oh yeah. We don't know where the dark art goes. We kind of know that it doesn't go into the realms of the void. But what if it goes into Ny'alotha? And what if what Xal'atath is busy doing? Because remember, Xal'atath is called the Harbinger. The Harbinger of the void. What if Xal'atath's role and job is to feed power into the dark heart, thereby feeding the old gods, so that the old gods can be powerful enough to once again manifest themselves. And this is why Xal'atath went all around the world tapping every source of ancient void magic she could get her hands on, because the old gods require this in order to be reborn in their fullness and in their full power. I think that would be a really cool story to explore. I think that could be a really cool story to explore. There's also, and we're going to cover this topic in a second, because there's even more evidence that the Titans really should not be trusted than there's ever been. It's actually interesting to me at this point that people still want to argue about the Titans being trustworthy or not. Do you find the Titans or the old gods to be more of our allies? So, Ashley, I don't find anyone to be our allies. And I think it's very important that people accept this. I think the problem for me, narratively speaking, when we start talking about allies or friends, is it closes avenues to potential storylines that doesn't need to be closed. Now, by that, I don't mean that we don't need allies, but we should find our allies in fellow mortals. Because with mortals, you can always just bring a new mortal into the fray and make a cool story around them. But with these big sort of cosmological beings, I'm almost always going to err on the side of let them have their own interests and allow their interests to sometimes coincide with ours and other times completely break from our interests. In the moments where it coincides with ours, we get this sort of symbiotic relationship that we've had with the Titans for quite some time. But should our interests sort of become opposing to that of the Titans, then that symbiotic relationship can very quickly turn into a very hostile relationship with the Titans. That's something that I prefer from a storytelling perspective, especially when it comes to the cosmological beings, because I think there's some incredible storylines that you can tell if the Titans are not good. So if the Titans are not friends, there's some incredible storylines that you can tell. Pretty much in the same vein that the old god storylines have been so much cooler than that of the Titans. I think if you went around and you asked 1,000 WoW players that care about the lore, who are your favorite characters, I think you'd be very hard pressed to find a lot of people saying the Titans. I think most people will say either Sylvanas or the old gods or, Arthas. People like villains. And people like specifically villains with a lot of layers. And the old gods have that in spades. Because the old gods aren't just your bog standard Disney villain. Every single one of the old gods have these weird ideas. The way they speak to you, it's not full-blown evil, but it's kind of evil, right? And so you're sort of going, do I trust you or do I not trust you? Well, what's the right play here? Because you say a lot of things that make sense to me, but I also kind of wonder if you just want to say this because you're lying to me, right? That's sort of what you get when you create this neither friend nor foe approach to characters, which I think you don't have if you just have straight up friends. Yeah, it's a little creepy, right? Gilgamesh, thank you very much. I appreciate that, sir. But to answer your question, Epic Thulu, because your question just sparked my imagination and I wanted to share that. But to answer your question, the thing that stands between Blizzard updating and upgrading Outland is, what are they upgrading Outland for? That's the only thing I'm not entirely sure about, because I think all zones that are upgraded will be upgraded because there will be a purpose and a reason for us going back there. Technically speaking, Outland is already dead. It's a dead land. It's a land that is barely holding together. There's very little there. There's very little reason for us to even go back there. So the question would be, if Blizzard does spend a significant sum of resources trying to update and revamp Outland, why? Recon fighting Norganon? When Thrall was there, Outland was recovered, Akalon? Outland will never fully recover. And when Thrall was there, I'm assuming you mean the cinematic with Thrall there. You're talking about the cinematic where Sourfang looks for Thrall. Alright. Alright, no problem. We can quickly... I'll show you it wasn't recovered. See that? It's not recovered. This right here is already the equivalent of Showdown Tal. As soon as he touched it, it completely starts to disintegrate. It's the equivalent of, it looks fine, but it's rotten at the core. And if you listen further... No, this is Nagrand. You can see it. Look at the floating islands. So, the floating islands is a result of the Outland being torn apart by the portals that Ner'zhul is opening during just before the Great Invasion, right? Ner'zhul is trying to break open the world. He's opening all of these portals all over the place, and these portals are draining so much power from the land that the land itself is starting to break apart. So the floating islands there that you see there, that gives us the hint that this is Outland Draenor and not Draenor.
So, this is home now. Home. Family. And where are they? Not far. This world... oh, it looks good. But it's wrong.
There he says it. This world, it looks good, but it's wrong. And then you see the camera shift to the corn or the grain, right? And you see the grain as the wind blows. The grain is blowing away because
but
the world's
it's wrong. Broken.
The world is not recovering.
Falling apart. Just like the Horde.
Listen to everything he says here.
It's Wrong. Broken. Falling apart. Just like the Horde.
It's wrong. It's broken. It's falling apart. The world is not recovering. So what you need to understand about Outland. Outland is dead. There is no saving Outland. What you have here, the grain that is growing here, the green that you see, is the last bit of life that this planet has in it. Because the magic of the foul fed on the land. It completely drained the land of all of its life energy. So there simply isn't enough energy left to make more of it. The idea, I would assume, now we don't know if Outland ever had a soul inside of it. That's obviously, that's never actually been confirmed. If there was a world soul, but let's say there wasn't a world soul. Then my thinking around it would be, a planet has a certain amount of, at least in World of Warcraft's lore, a planet will have an amount of, let's call it, life-giving energy. The life that it gives, or the energy that it expends to create life, is given back to it as that life dies, and so on and so forth. And if there is enough of that life-giving energy, it never expends enough energy to the point where it cannot immediately survive getting that energy back. So it stays in equilibrium. What the foul magic did was it drained all of the life energy to now the point where there's not enough life to feed the planet with more life, but there's also not enough life energy to recreate life. So this is why it's LAC. How you doing? Thanks for the follow. Really appreciate you. Welcome to the channel. Thank you. This is why when you go into Hellfire Peninsula, for example, it is a complete barren wasteland. When you go to Nether, what's it called again? The Blade Edge Mountains, also complete wasteland. Nether, what's the Nether? Netherstorm. Thank you. When you go to Netherstorm, the only life is the life inside the arcane domes, and the arcane domes is the thing that's basically providing the life. The rest of the planet is a complete barren wasteland, and the Grand is the only bit of green that you see. Zangramarsh is fungi, right? It's a bunch of mushrooms that grows there. The land is dying. It has a little bit left, but it's not enough to sustain itself. So, Outland, in my opinion, if I was Blizzard, and this would be very unpopular, but I would have a major story where maybe one final quest line where the player base goes back to Outland to save the last remaining citizens that live in Outland as Outland finally disintegrates. And then you have a beautiful cinematic as you see the bits of Outland completely break apart and sort of drift off into space as the world finally dies. And then you remove Outland from the game entirely. And maybe you just leave it as like a classic experience. That's probably the only canonical story you can do. There's another storyline that you could do, but I'm not entirely sure how, it would be a very difficult storyline to pull off, but if Blizzard could do it, that could be cool. An expansion where there's we're literally trying to give it life back. So we, the player base, go there with a bunch of druids and a bunch of shamans, and we figure out how to restart the planet, so to speak. So that's another option you could go for. But I think that could be more difficult to do. D4, I think it depends on what we think the... So the demons operated without Sargeras for a very long time. They'll just continue doing what they did without Sargeras, which is to drag lands into the Twisting Nether. That's what they do, right? And I don't necessarily believe that I don't believe that Sargeras was the leader of the demons. I don't think the demons were just acting on instinct. I think there's always been leaders of the demons. And I would go so far as to say, do you guys remember the cinematic I'm trying to see. Where's that cinematic? Oh, what is that cinematic called? Is it this one? I think it's this one.
Sargeras believed the only way to spare the universe from the Void Lords was to purge it of all life. The fallen Titan and his army set forth upon their first planet.
No, it's not this one. What were those things? What were those called? They had like this series where they showed every single one of the factions. Not Netherlords, the Necrolords. But was it the Necrolords? What were they called again? What was that faction called again in Shadowlands? It was the Necrolords, right? Oh no. Yeah, it's Necrolords. Why did I say Netherlords? What the hell am I thinking? There was a series of cinematics. Afterlives. Thank you. That's the one I'm looking for. Afterlives. Afterlives. Maldraxxus. There we go. I think it's this one.
In life, I was Draka of the Frost Wolf clan. Everything. I was not. Maldraxxus, where the armies of the five houses once stood.
I just noticed this. You guys notice something? Yeah, there's something strange. Something strange about this map. I'm just not entirely sure what it is, but there's something that stands out about this map for me. It's just something that makes me feel uneasy with the map. It's kind of like Azeroth, pre-sundering. Very much. The map looks like it could be any zone in Azeroth, basically. How many bodies orbiting Azeroth? No idea. Zeraxian? Shaped like a body. It's very weird. But anyways, let's see.
Where the armies of the 5 houses once stood side by side to protect the realm of death. It was here I served the House of Eyes. A strange fit for a warrior's soul.
Again.
Their ways.
Okay. Why is Maldraxxus spying on the demons? Yeah. The lore of Maldraxxus is that it was on the back of a giant creature. This opens a hell of a lot more story, but sadly, those stories were never really dived into. So we didn't really get much more from those storylines, but it is interesting. Keep an eye on them. Why? Why would they keep an eye on them? What would be the purpose or the point of keeping an eye on them? Hope Shadowlands are just the order vision of real of death and not the real death. I don't think it is real death. Just like the snake and Gundrak. I also wonder about the demon stuff. Oh, Akko just played Reforged, and I don't get one thing. It's like the Lich King and the Legion is the same, but they're constantly fighting. Yeah, but the Lich King and the Legion isn't the same. There's an assumed connection between the Primus and the Legion. Is that your answer, Kiki? You think the Primus and the Legion is connected? What do you see when you look at Siren Athreus? What does he look like to you? First thoughts, as you see him, what does he look like to you? Beside a Giga Chad, because yes, he does look like a Giga Chad. He looks like a demon, right? He looks like a demon. I don't think that the Primus and the Necrolords were spying on the Burning Crusade or the Burning Legion because of the Primus's connections to the Legion. I believe they were spying on the Legion because the Primus knew what Denathrius's original, where he originally comes from. Now, you all know my theory about how the coalitions were built. I believe that the way the current cosmological world is set up, so the way that you have the Order Pantheon and also the Death Pantheon, I believe that is very specifically designed as such. I believe Aman'Thul is the only original Titan creature. I don't think he's a Titan, but let's call him a Titan. But I believe he's the only original denizen of order. And I believe because he's the only original denizen of order, he was able to act far quicker. So all of the other cosmological forces would have had significant problems organizing forces, because life is very chaotic in its nature. So life would have had a lot of infighting and a lot of sort of trying to figure stuff out. Chaos, which is the demonic realms, they would by definition have a lot of infighting. Death would have been, well, basically obsessed with death, and therefore the realms of life would have little meaning to them. And then Void would be so obsessed with their 1,000 truths that Void would just not act. And so what would end up happening is Aman'Thul, because he is the first to act, he is able to shut down all of the cosmological forces that he doesn't agree with, that he doesn't want to be represented within the Great Beyond. And thus, he shuts down the realms of life, most likely shuts down the realms of light, definitely shuts down the realms of disorder, and he shuts down the realms of the void, because these form the greatest threat. So while the light would almost certainly be more well aligned with order and death than with any of the others, the light is a little bit too one-track minded for Aman'Thul. And also a little bit too shall we say, fundamentalist for Aman'Thul. And so he decides to lock them up, keep them out. Zealous is a good word, yes. They're too zealous. So he locks up the light. He allows, however, for the light to send out Naru, so the light can still have a presence within the Great Beyond, because the light isn't necessarily an enemy, but the light cannot have full access to it. The void he shuts out completely, because they just cannot be trusted. He gets into the realms of death, he completely conquers the realms of death, and from the realms of death, he places himself as the ruler of the realms of death. The problem is he needs to do a bunch of other things as well. And so his crusade will eventually pull him away from the realms of death to other areas. But while he's in the realms of death, he and the Primus connects. And him and the Primus come up with a wonderful plan. The Primus being of like mind. So the Primus also very much not, he has no moral qualms with mind control and domination and things like that. The Primus develops domination magic. Using domination magic, they are able to dominate the minds of the other Eternal Ones. Now, the Eternal Ones, I believe, were originally not meant to be the rulers of the Shadowlands, the lands of death. I believe that they were meant to be servants of the realms of death. Their job, their only real job, would have been to play janitor, make sure that everything keeps functioning. They have better plans here, and so they end up choosing their Eternal Ones that they like, placing them under domination magic, giving them each a realm, and this allows for Aman'Thul and the other Titans to funnel this strange magic that is soul magic, anima, out of the world from the living. But we're obviously not focused on the realms of death today. We're focused on the realms of disorder. You see, Aman'Thul, being of order, does understand the necessity for elements of chaos. Not full chaos, but elements of chaos is understandable. And so what Aman'Thul does is Aman'Thul allows for two beings from chaos to escape the realms of chaos and join the new world order. Let's just put it that way. One is Denathrius, the other is Sargeras. Both Denathrius and Sargeras, placed under domination magic, now serves in the armies of Aman'Thul. This is why Aman'Thul sends Sargeras to fight the demons. Because who better to fight the demons than a demon lord himself? And since he is being dominated, there's no way that, he can ever not do that. This is literally all he does. But I think as Sargeras moves throughout the realms of disorder, he starts to question. Because the domination magic is failing. It's sort of, and we have precedent for this in the game. If you go and look at the Lich King, at some point the Lich King forces Arthas to go back to Northrend. And the reason Arthas has to go back to Northrend is as the Lich King As the Lich King spreads his influence further and further out, the influence becomes weaker. This is one of the reasons why the Forsaken is able to escape the service of the Lich King, because the Lich King is so much further away from them. It makes it weak enough that they can actually escape through the sheer of their own will. And then, of course, also the fact that the Lich King kind of ruined himself by sending out Frostmourne, so he was already seeping power. But this is sort of the same effect. As Sargeras moved further and further out, that domination magic started to sort of crumble around him and started to remove from him, and he was able to rebel. Denathrius, most likely the same. I think where things went wrong for Denathrius was the second that Zovaal realized what the Primus and Aman'Thul had done. When Zovaal realized... Now, how Zovaal realized this is anyone's guess. My best guess would be through witnessing the lives of all of these souls coming into the Shadowlands. At some point, Zovaal saw a life of a mortal that may have figured this out. At some point, he saw a mortal life, and this mortal life had uncovered the truth. I would not be surprised if that mortal life is Medivh. Just gonna say it. It could be Medivh. And it could be that after Zovaal saw that from Medivh, he allowed Medivh to go back and instead tie himself to the to Karazhan. Because we know that the Karazhan has incredible information inside of it. Most of it will never even be able to know. So it is possible that Medivh, because remember, so there's so much information here. So Karazhan, as it is built, is a bridge between reality and the Twisting Nether. So when you are in Karazhan, you are effectively standing between two worlds. This is why when you do Karazhan the raid, there are so many weird things that happen in the raid. Because Karazhan is between these two worlds, the rules work very, very differently there. This is how the Watcher, Medivh, was able to accrue so much information. By using the Twisting Nether, he could travel the Twisting Nether and find incredible knowledge. And I think he stumbled upon this truth. So when Medivh was finally killed, and Medivh, Zovaal saw Medivh's life flash in front of him, Zovaal realized, shit, what's been happening to us? And then, once the Primus was locked up as the Rune Carver, this is when Denathrius was finally able to break free. Because now the domination magic was waning, and Denathrius was able to break free from this stupor that he was in. I believe the whole constantly spying on the Burning Legion was the Primus trying to make sure that Denathrius is still under control. Just every once in a while, go check out what the Burning Legion is doing. If it starts to look like the Burning Legion has way too much focus and order, we know that they're being led again. So we know that their leaders are back. As long as we know that they're just sort of attacking worlds and doing, demon things, that's fine. That's what they do because they don't have a leader to direct them. But the second we start seeing high-level sort of big brain thinking, we know that one of their leaders had returned. And we obviously know that Sargeras is that leader. Sargeras went back. Now, the question, of course, in that would be, how does this all play itself out? How does all of this end? I think, and to answer the question that was asked to me, I think the demons are currently under control of Denathrius over here. I think the next time we see Denathrius is with a demon invasion of some kind. The Burning Legion will be back, maybe this time bigger than ever before. Because unlike Sargeras, who was quite obsessed with Azeroth, I don't think Denathrius shares that obsession. So the Burning Legion may actually now arrive in full force, not to conquer Azeroth, but to destroy her. I would not be surprised. So yeah, I think Denathrius is the one that's in charge of the demons right now. And that's also why we see so little of the demons. At least that's my thoughts. Throne race, any mortal that falls to the foul becomes a demon. You see that with the Raid Draenei. Ebithulu, the problem with that would be is the argument that demons are all created from mortals that fall to the foul. Except, if you go and you do, if you do the storyline for the Warlock Greenfire, there is a Warlock that falls to demons, but it's not that he becomes a demon himself. It's that there's a demon that enters him, and he then manifests that demon. So the demon basically uses his body as a skin. So there's two conflicting lore reasons for demons. I'm not sure which one Blizzard is going to choose. As like, this is the one we're going to go for. But even then, I don't have a problem with the argument that demons aren't original. Because from my perspective, the fact that there are so many different kinds of demons makes it somewhat problematic. You know, you look at, for example, beings that serve the Titans. They all follow the same sort of trend, and while, yes, there are different types, most of them look exactly the same, or at least similar in origin. But then you look at the demons, and there's literally... You have Pit Lords, for example, that look nothing like imps. And imps look nothing like Void Walkers. And Void Walkers look nothing like Foul Hunters. And Foul Hunters look nothing like Foul Guards. It really is sort of just this amalgamation of different beings that all seem to live in the Twisting Nether. But that could literally be it. So we like to think of the Twisting Nether as just this realm of the demons. But what if the Twisting Nether is an entire world of its own? With its own planets and its own denizens. And those denizens, because they're in the realms of disorder, that foul magic eventually turns them into what we would consider to be demons. But they're not actually demons. They're just denizens from different planets. Jackson, yeah, there's some very weird stuff with the demons. Actually, Medivh was seriously injured. So in my theory, Medivh was injured enough to where he may have found his way into Zovaal's lair, so to speak. There's a realm of its own with its own planets. I think that was confirmed around the time of Warcraft 3 TBC. Well, Kyle, the problem is what has or has not been confirmed of the Twisting Nether is a matter of debate. Because the truth is, we genuinely don't really know what is or is not confirmed in the Twisting Nether. Yeah, but that raven could have been Khadgar. Because we know that Khadgar can do it as well. So let me show you, just so you know what I'm talking about. Here's the evidence, in case you were wondering, Ashley. When Khadgar killed Medivh, so Khadgar killed Medivh, they had an epic fight. The movie doesn't quite do justice what actually happened there after that fight. So the reason Khadgar looks as if he's 80 is because of that fight. Just FYI, the fight took so much power out of him that he aged like 20 years or some shit. He was grey right after that fight. I believe Khadgar was something like 19 when he fought Medivh, and he was grey at the end of the fight. But after that fight, he killed Medivh. Medivh's spirit was then resurrected by the magic of his mother. But I think that it was in that time that he was dead, that he was a spirit, that he appeared in front of Zovaal. So yeah, that's my theory at least. That's what my theory is all about. Sorry, I just wanted to show this to you guys that you don't think I'm just making up lore as I go along. This is at least the lore as we currently understand it. Is it gonna also possible? What do you mean it's my assumption? My assumption isn't that Medivh died. That is canonical. Khadgar and Medivh fought and Khadgar killed Medivh. So that's canonical. My assumption is that after Khadgar killed Medivh, Medivh's soul, for a very short period of time, appeared in front of Zovaal, as all souls are supposed to do. Zovaal, witnessing Medivh's life, seeing what Medivh knows, realizes, wait, what? We've been dominated this whole time? So all of this is a lie? And so for that little nugget of truth, Zovaal decides as his first act of disobedience to send Medivh back to the realms of the living. But obviously Medivh is dead, but his mother cast a spell that would bring him back to life. And so that's what happens. So he's in spirit form at the minute, and I believe he's tied to Karazhan as things stand. Right now, my major theories are Sargeras stabbed part of the manifold, and that is why the Beledar is falling to void. So we should probably talk about that before we get too far down the weeds of this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting really tired of saying I told you so. But it would appear I once again told you so. And not you guys. I'm talking to all the non-believers. The people who are still refusing absolutely to believe that the Titans are evil, or at least that the Titans don't care. So we have a new disc quest that just dropped this week. And in this disc quest, we find even more evidence that the Titans genuinely cannot be trusted. So I'm going to read through this for you, and then we'll discuss it. The great Khadgar revealed to me that the corrupting influence of the imprisoned old gods was affecting the world soul. To protect it, we had the earthen construct a world core, a vast chamber at the heart of the world. There the world soul will slumber, with only the Titans to influence it. I want you to really pay attention to what is being said here, and then remember what happened in the previous quests. We're told that the Titans sought all throughout the great beyond for the prime world soul. This one world soul to rule them all. But we're also told that it's not just the Titans that are searching for this prime world soul, but in essence, all of the cosmological powers are looking for this prime world soul. And I believe that this answers the question, are the Titans from world souls? And the answer is no. World souls is a very specific thing. And the great beyond, or the cosmological powers, fights over these world souls in an attempt to raise an army, some kind of army. We don't exactly know which army or for what purpose, but they're trying to find more and more of these world souls. Some will be twisted to the powers of the Nether. Some will be twisted to the power of the Void. Some will be twisted to the power of order. But ultimately, the idea is to find this prime world soul. Because if you can get the prime soul, and this is what I think the Nathrezim was talking about. Remember, it is Sargeras that speaks to the Nathrezim, and the Nathrezim tell him that if the old gods manage to corrupt a world soul, this world soul would be so powerful that none of the Titans could stand against it. I believe that all world souls answer to the prime world soul. So even though they have all tried to corrupt these world souls, to bring these world souls to their side, the only way they've been able to do it up until now is through their own versions of domination magic. So they use domination magic, and then this brings the world souls under their control. But if they can get the prime world soul, and this is what I think the Chronicles are talking about, because the Titans say the old gods tried for years to influence their minds and to bring them under the influence of chaos. We've never seen the old gods try that even once. We've never even heard the old gods mention that is something that they wanted to try. Like, never. So I don't believe that the old gods ever had any interest in trying to corrupt an actual, what we today know as Titans. The Titans were basically, they were kind of lying to us. They were kind of making stuff up. But it was still grounded in truth. You see, because the Titans, encountering full-blown world souls, had tried to corrupt them or influence them. The problem is, once a world soul is born, it will only ever listen to the prime world soul. It will only ever do what the prime world soul says. So the Titans realized the only way to get a world soul is to get it young. You have to get it while it's still sleeping. And Sargeras sort of proves what happens when you do that, right? The problem is it doesn't really grow normally when you do that. We can see that with what happens to Argus. You stunt its growth, but that does twist it to your favor, fundamentally. So that's what the Titans are up to. I must note a disturbing development. As they worked to greater depths, some Earthen began to behave erratically. This could not be countenanced. Most units were repaired and continued their work, but some began to physically change and crystallize. They named themselves Khadgar. It's important that you listen to this. They named themselves Khadgar. So this crystallization gave them a modicum of free will. They were able to name themselves. In other words, they became aware of their own existence as a result of being crystallized. These faulty units were so greatly affected that they rebelled against us, attacking and damaging the world core. Now, let's go back up. What is the purpose of this world core? To protect it, we had the Earthen construct a world core, a vast chamber at the heart of the world. There, the world soul will slumber with only the Titans to influence it. So we know that when the Earthen, the closer they came to the core, to the heart of Azeroth, Azeroth started to affect them, influence them, give them freedom, crystallize them. They called themselves Khadgar. But they became so faulty, so some of the units became so free that they in turn started to attack the world core. Now here's where things get interesting. Magni had free will, but what else did Magni have, chat? Gumption. Molten soul. No. Something very specific. What did Magni hear? He heard Azeroth's voice. He acted on command of Azeroth's voice. Is it possible to assume that the Thragar had the same thing? The Thragar could hear the voice of Azeroth. They understood Azeroth. And Azeroth was the one telling them, attack this world core. Because the world core isn't meant to keep the world soul safe. It's meant to control the world soul. So anyways, they started to attack the world core. In the course of studying them, it was determined that long exposure to the world soul's energies led to the changes exhibited in their core directives. So we're clearly now at the point where, remember, these are the Titans and the Titan creations doing what the Titans are asking them to do for a fellow Titan. Because according to the Titans, Azeroth is a fellow Titan. And the reason they constructed the Manifold and the World Core was to safeguard a fellow Titan from corruption from outside sources. So why would a fellow Titan that is like Aman'Thul, like ANR, like all of them, why would this fellow Titan rebel, change the creations of the Titans into Thragar, and then instruct the Thragar to attack the World Core? This makes no sense. The Titans are trying to keep their sister safe, and their sister is going, screw you, bitch. I don't want to be safe. I want the corruption of the old gods. No. There's something much darker here. If we cannot prevent this from happening, it will prove catastrophic to not only the World Core, but to the Manifold itself. Measures must be taken. Note that Arcadis never once says that it will be destructive to the World Soul. It'll be destructive to the World Core and to the Manifold. He doesn't give a shit about the World Soul. The World Soul's safety is not their concern. The World Soul's, the machines built to imprison the World Soul is the only thing that they really care about. And it is important that these Thragar are shut down immediately. But it goes on. This is now when Brinth and Dagran are talking about this. I do not recall this happening. That should not be. This World Core seems as if it was a monumental undertaking. And the Earthen malfunctioning? How would the World Soul's energy cause that? This is very confusing. Asking the right questions. By the way, what does he mean by repaired? Unclear. But what he said about the Thragar rebelling is most disturbing. The Thragar? That's what they called Granda when he first got to Khadgar. We regard them as legendary champions, almost demigods. To learn that their directives were just corrupted? That they were anomalies? So they were very powerful as a result of what Azeroth did for them. Was everything we believed mistaken or even a lie? Wait, you don't suppose? If the Earthen were affected by the World Soul's radiation, the closer they got to it, could it be that it was actually trying to reach your people? Asking for help? Like it did with my Grandar? And nothing undoing their directives? Was it actually giving them free will? I do not know. Or are we still gonna have debates here over whether or not the Titans actually have Azeroth's best interests at heart? Is that a debate that we still have to have, chat? Or are people finally starting to see not even Azeroth wants what the Titans are trying to do to her? In fact, Azeroth is actively trying to destroy what the Titans are doing to her. I don't believe that Azeroth is a Titan. In fact, I am more convinced of it than ever. And I think most people should be. Now, Are there people that will immediately scream, Raidcon? Yes. Are they wrong? No. They're absolutely correct. This is technically a Raidcon. Although it must be pointed out that we have only ever believed the Titans to be good because that's what they said they were. They made themselves out to be allies. And we had no reason to doubt that. Look at what they did for the dragons. But then also look at what they did to the primal dragons. So clearly the Titans, I believe that the writers did change their minds. I think originally the idea was that they would be friends and friendly with us mortals. But I think Chris Mason had a better idea. I think Chris Mason, rightfully so, realized, wait a second. I can make the Titans a hell of a lot more interesting if I make them evil. If I make them, not evil. Evil is the wrong word. If I make them neutral. Neither good nor bad, but same. Same as the Void, same as the demons. They have their own goals, their own lives, and they want to do what they want to do, and that's the end of it. And that's what I think is happening here. What do you think about the fact that the Oracles in Sholazar knew the word Thragar too? I'm not surprised by it. I'm definitely not surprised by it, but I think we're going to learn a lot more about the Titans. And yeah, the truth is Algalon did all but confirm it, but the problem with Algalon's voice lines, the lines from Algalon, is that they can be interpreted differently. If you truly believe that the Old Gods is a major threat to all life in the galaxy, then what Algalon and the Titans' plan for Algalon was actually noble. Yes, you are sacrificing billions of lives, but you're also saving an entire galaxy. However, once you leave that presupposition by the wayside, and you say, hold up, are the Old Gods actually the big bad evil? Then Algalon's dialogue becomes highly problematic. Because that's when you go, wait, you guys were willing to sacrifice billions of lives purely because you and you alone are allowed to corrupt the planet. No one else is allowed to do it. That's it. It's just for you. Yeah, Sylvanas had a line as well. This world is a prison, which she may actually have been referring to. Direx, you are absolutely correct. But they're not evil. I mean, I've said this before. Evil is a word that people need to lose quickly. I realize we live in a world where, the people who vote different to you are evil. And the people who look different to you are evil, whatever, right? Leave the real world for 2 seconds out of it. Don't even think about the real world for 2 seconds. In WoW, I think the word evil is detrimental to the discovery of truth. Because I think if you think evil, you're automatically going to position yourself opposite to that because you don't want to be evil, you want to be good, or at least on the side of good. So it creates a natural presupposition that will make you hostile towards anyone that you label as evil. I think it's far better to look at them as individual actors, neutral actors that have their own ideals and ideas. And if you align with those ideals and ideas, you become an ally. If you do not align with those ideas and ideals, then you become an enemy. So don't think of them as allies or think of them as evil. Think of them as neutral agents. And yes, it is perspective. Give me 100%. It is perspective. So we are sort of moving into the world of Immanuel Kant, or Kant, where, what you view is actually from your perspective, and there's two perspectives, the way you view it, and also the angle from which you're viewing it. So I don't want to go into Immanuel Kant too much here, because that would be a whole probably 4-hour discussion of philosophy, and he is already a very difficult philosopher to follow. But yeah, we are sort of moving into Immanuel Kant and the things that Immanuel Kant philosophized about. I do like saying Immanuel. Well, Immanuel Kant. Like, I can't say it correctly, but yeah, it's more fun to say it the other way. That is true. It is more fun to say it the other way, Gilgamesh. So, any questions, ladies and gentlemen? We have 5 minutes left before I have to go to dinner. I'm going to my favorite restaurant tonight, so I'm really looking forward to it. Just about to ask, what's for dinner? Sen family, thank you very much. I'm going to a place called Bossa. It's a restaurant. The restaurant itself looks out. Oh, well, it doesn't just look out over the ocean. It's literally built over the ocean. So where you're sitting and eating, it's the ocean comes underneath. And you're sitting here, so the waves break just under it on the rocks there. And then you have this entire restaurant that you sit there. So you just look over the ocean. It's very beautiful. But they sell the best burgers you'll ever have in your entire life. Like, hands down, the best burgers ever. So huge fan of Bossa. No worries, mate. Have a great dinner. It's nearly 1 a.m. over here. Shit, right? And you stayed alive for it. You are a trooper, sir. Prime steak in my honor. I don't know if I'm gonna have steak. Their burger is sublime. Off topic from the WoW stuff, but there's development on the Reddit, which is Cabal. They're not moving out of the state and looking for places to lay low for 4 years. Lol. Of course. Literally over the ocean, eats burgers. Ardwick, I'm not a huge seafood guy. Like, the only seafood I really like is prawns. And even that is like, whatever. I'm more of a red meat guy. So, yeah. If I go to any restaurant, I'll usually have either a burger or steak. Doing a meal there, and have a wonderful weekend. Kiki, thank you very much. Do you think the wild gods are coming back? Yes, Necro. That was one of the topics I wanted to discuss today, but we had so many other topics to discuss, we didn't get to that one, because there's also reveals in the 11.1 patch files that showcase that the Haranir is now, like, pretty much confirmed for patch 11.1. And that means... I don't want to say it absolutely means wild gods are coming back, but I think it pretty much reveals that wild gods are coming back. They're going to make a huge return. Because I don't see how you do Haranir without, like, wild gods and stuff. It'd be a massive missed opportunity from my perspective. Right now, I'm just, like, fish and shit I find very boring. There are times where fish is alright, but most of the time I find it boring. More often, when we discuss about Titan ordering, we talk about machinery. What is the force exactly opposite to machinery? Strugglers, I don't really know. I mean, no idea, actually. Because I'm assuming you are asking in terms of opposite to the machining of the orders, or of order. And I really do not know. I get what you mean. That's not wrong. So it's basically like just a little bit, just changing it a little. You see, but the problem there is that would pit order against life, or the argument then would be we've been fooling ourselves into thinking that this is a battle of 6v1 or maybe 3v3 or whatever, when in reality it is actually a battle between it's a 1v1 battle rather. Right? So if I'm extrapolating what you're saying, then it's not a battle of 3v3 or 4v2 or any of that. No. It's a battle of 1v1. It's life versus the machine. So that would then suggest that the machine is all of the cosmological forces. That's the machine. And life is the opposite of that. So Azeroth and whatever is growing inside of these planets. So we're basically Terminator almost. Frozen Solid, not. You are correct insofar as it's not. No, I would actually say you're not correct in it's not opposite, because it technically is opposite. If you go machine, in other words, no organic matter, and organic matter, those are the two opposites, right? It's not the only opposites that can exist, but it is the two opposites, right? Or they are at least opposites to one another. The question is, are they natural enemies? That obviously is a bigger question. I'm not sure how you answer, or how you even get to that answer. Vengeance, I'll look at all of that over the weekend. I promise I will check out all of your DMs and stuff, because I've got a lot of people who DM'd me about stuff. Ferorius, your DMs as well. I will check out over the weekend, I promise. But now I'm going to go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for episode 24 of the Barrens Chat. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It's always super fun hanging out with you on a Friday. I will be back. Well, you'll probably see videos of mine all throughout the week, but then I will be back next Friday with another episode of Barrens Chat. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.